Let the darkness be your light. Leave behind these rings of sorrow.
I had a good life as a child.
Your hands have held the oceans tight. Squeeze drops of rain upon the lawn.
We'd get up in the morning and kind of didn't want to take time to eat and went to the river, and just even to go outside and smell the river. We loved outside. I had a really good, happy childhood.
Come I sing on morning's breeze as the sun begins to glow. Lift your wings and fly with me. I'll lift you from this mortal core.
My mother and father were very musical, and he played the guitar and my mother played the piano. And we used to sit out on the front veranda, and he would strum on the guitar and we'd all be singing. And it was like putting on a little concert for the neighborhood. But it's something that we really enjoyed doing, and it was a nice pastime, and that brought us close together.
My mother made baskets, all kinds of baskets, laundry baskets, which were normally at least 3 feet high. And my brother and I, this is the middle brother, we used to play hide and seek all the time, and so I hid in the basket because I was the younger child, and he just couldn't find me. And I remembered my mother telling me to be quiet, and because I was in there a long time because he couldn't find me and I wanted to get out.
People here got dressed up in their Indian regalia, and they'd start off marching as the Put-in-Bay was landing, or whatever the passenger ship. There were different ones. They'd start off and march about a block from my house along River Road, go by my house, into the fairgrounds, into the bandstand.
Before I ever started school, I used to help my mother do beading, and we would go into town. Mind you, we walked from the reserve all the way uptown because there was no bus service at the time. They had these big, huge homes along Christina Street, and I used to think, well, those people just came here to this country. How can they afford to live in such big, huge houses as compared to the little shacks that we lived in? I used to be quite amazed at the difference between their lifestyle and ours. And so I used to think, well, to me it seemed like it took money. And to get money, you had to work. So I decided what I really wanted to become was a nurse. But things didn't turn out that way.
I was 4.5 when I was taken from my front yard to be put into the residential school system. My brother, that was 2 years older, he had more memories of those days than I did. He was a little over 6 when they took him. They took us on the same day, but we arrived at the school a day apart. And if you had been a brother and sister, at that time they would have separated you as you walked in the front door.
The Indian agent came and collected us all and put us on the train, and he warned us that we cannot get off until we get to Brantford. He said, the conductor will be watching you, so you're to stay in your seats until you get to Brantford, which we did. And then that began my experience with Mohawk Institute in Brantford.
My dad got a job down the lake at the Canada Club and on Bassett Island, which means in the winter you couldn't get up here. The river froze. It froze so hard some cars could drive along the shore on the river. I could not get up here to school. so it was out of my parents' hands. The Indian Act had also said that all Indian children must go to school or their parents could be jailed. We were Crown wards until 1961. You know, you don't really believe your life is going to change. So we had no choice. Us older kids had to go to school, and on November 9th, 1943, I was 9 years old. We were told we were going to Mohawk Institute. That day, and we got on the train, I see myself in my mind's eye crying and inconsolable, and because it was just us 4 kids going, and my older sister was trying to comfort me and my brother. The principal met us at the train and took us to the school. And the principal separated us from my brother. He said when we came there, we would be able to have a visiting day, I think, once a month. In my 3.5 years there, I think that might have happened once. They didn't even want you making eye contact. When we're sitting in the, we had prayer service every evening, we'd be in the same room. No, you couldn't go over and say, "Hi, Dave." No way. You could not. I mean, you'd get a strapping. And when you witness a few strappings, you know you just don't want that to happen to you.
The very moment I saw the principal, who was also the minister there, I had an immediate reaction, sort of instinct. I knew that I couldn't trust him. And I didn't know why. I just had this feeling. I was forever being sent up to his office and being strapped. And they were severe, severe straps. He would hit down as hard as he could. He would even get up on his tiptoes to have as much strength and as much leverage to come down as hard as he could. You know, I didn't start any trouble of any kind, so I thought maybe he just wants to break my spirit.
And if people wanted to talk Indian, they'd have to go and sneak around somewhere. And if they were caught, they were strapped. You know, they really liked to make your arm and hands, they wouldn't, I think what was allowed was, a few straps on your hand. I don't know how many, whether it's 5 or 10. But some of them would, hit you on your here. And those kids would have, swelled up limbs.
We had a cubby hole under the stairs, and there was a cubby hole on both the boys' side and the girls' side, and it was isolation punishment. You were put in the cubby hole if they felt you did something severe, and speaking your own language was one of those things. And it was a cubby hole about 4 feet square, I would say, and dark, no light in there, and you were given bread and water.
I remember looking out the window. You could go to a bed and look out an open window. And I looked down there, and I could see these boys down there. And then it looked like little piles of dust. And I thought, what the heck? Then I realized what was happening. These little boys are fighting. And the big boys are pushing them if they didn't want to fight, forcing them to fight. And even as a kid, I was appalled.
It was a very depressing atmosphere to be in, because you never knew when you were going to be attacked or by whom. So I found it very, very depressing.
Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing when you get there. You're assigned a number.
Do you remember yours?
Yeah, 21. My sister was 20.
You didn't have a name anymore. You had a number. So you felt like you were a prisoner.
You know, all of this is so, I don't realize it before, so horrible. It brings back those old feelings. And to me, the hard part was having to witness, today I would say, the abuse of other kids.
I remember one time one of the girls had run away, but she had been brought back, and she was shamed in the dining room in front of all the kids about her behavior, and she was whipped in front of all the kids. And whenever you see anybody being attacked like that, it's like you're being punished as well. So it was very, very dismal. It wasn't a happy place at all. None of the kids seemed to be happy, and no wonder, you know.
And we're survivors because it does take survival skills to live through something like that. I learned that you had to have survivor skills just to live every day. And so that's what we developed throughout those years. There's 123 children buried in the cemetery behind my school, my brother being one of them. It could have been for any reason at all. There were a lot of children that died for different reasons.
No one ever told us if a child had gone. They were there one day and then they were gone the next. You never really knew what happened to them. Nobody ever said anything to us. We were never informed.
You worked half a day and you went to school half a day.
The boys, they worked the farm, and the girls, they did all the washing, mending, and scrubbing and whatever, and cooking. So we were the ones that took care of the building. One of my jobs, my first jobs, was washing dishes. If you can imagine washing dishes for around 200 kids, you know, that's a lot. It takes a lot of time. And then I also worked in the dining room for the staff, and their food was so much, it was so tantalizing. It was torture really to work there because the food they got was so different from what we had, and they had their own chef prepare their food. So there was a huge difference.
You know, we're half starved there. We haven't even talked about the diet there, but let's just say everybody was half starved there. The food was no good.
In those days, this was 1941 to 1953, they had to get permission from Ottawa to go to the doctor, to take a child to the doctor. If they pulled your teeth, then they would wait till they were bad enough. They would lay you on the kitchen table and pull them out with a pair of pliers. I think the goal in those, I know the goal in those days was to kill the Indian and the child, get rid of the Indian problem. They didn't out and out have a plan to exterminate each one individually, but if it happened, there was never any sorrow about it. We were called names that I know what they thought of us. And so, like, you dumb Indian, you stupid Indian, you're not good for anything. And when you look at the goals in the old records of Aamjiwnaang anyway, it says, oh, we're trying to make them into farmers and housekeepers, and they'll be good to do that. So we know what they thought of us at the time. They could have given us a lot better care. I think the emotional abuse is far worse than the physical abuse even that the children endured during that time.
We came out in June, and by now, remember, my kid brother's with us. He wouldn't eat. We wondered what's wrong. At least you'd have candy or something if you don't want to eat food, and because was about a 4-hour trip. He wouldn't eat. We got home. Here his mouth was sore, bleeding. My mom took him to the doctor. He had trench mouth.
When you come home, like you're such an uptight person because of all the restrictions that you had at the school, and you're also full of anger. I knew it wasn't my mother's fault, but yet I took it out on her. I was so angry, and it spoiled our relationship. I never had a closeness with her after that. And it's as if I were blaming her for the situation we were in, but yet I knew in my head it wasn't true. But it was just total family breakdown. Anyway, she had to board me out to another home, and she left because the situation was really bad at home. I couldn't stand a lot of things, and it's all that anger that I felt at the school, I was taking it out on her.
When I look at all the impacts that we endured over those things that happened to us at the schools, it made a connection for me on why we are the way that we are. And people have asked us, well, how much money do you want? What can we do to fix this? And I say that 4 generations of people from our community went to residential schools, so you aren't going to fix it overnight. You could say 4 generations it will take to cure up some of the problems, but I'm not even sure of that.
Return my spirit to its grace and lift me from this hallowed curse. Come I sing on morning's breeze as the sun begins to glow. Lift your wings and fly with me. I'll lift you from this mortal